Nikita has just revealed all of the details about the perks and the debuffs for seasonal, so today we're going to look through all of them in detail to see which ones you should be picking for the next season, which is coming just around the corner. So here is the full list of modifiers. Nikita's just posted these out. You can see this tweets that he just sent about an hour ago. These are the explained modifiers. Their values may change before the start of the season, so just be careful. This isn't a definitive guide because obviously it hasn't come out, and based on what people say, they might change them. It does say this down at the bottom. But this is broadly split into three sections. You've got the global modifiers at the top, which apply to everybody. You've got the personal positives, which you can pick, and those lose you points. And then you have at the bottom personal negatives, which are debuffs, and those give you points. The way the rules work is if you pick some of these, you can then spend those points on the positives. You start at 0 points, and you cannot start the season until you've picked in such a way that you have 0 points or more, remembering that personal negatives give you positive points. It's done in a bit of a weird way, but it basically means that you can't pick personal positives on their own without a negative to go with them. So you've got to start at 0 points. This means that theoretically you could just look at the global modifiers and just click through and not pick anything because your character will start at 0. So you don't actually have to take any of these if you don't want to. But I think you may well want to, because some of the global modifiers impact some of the things that we might do down here. But before we can understand that, we need to look at the global modifiers first. So no insurance, cannot insure items before a raid. This disproportionately impacts players in a team because it means you can't just throw away your buddy's gear after a fight. Say you're in a 2v1 and your buddy gets killed, you can't just chuck his gear away and then loot the guy that you killed and then leave the raid. So that's going to have some monetary impact upon people who are playing in duos and trios and above. Solo players, it's not going to affect us as much. Sometimes you do get some stuff back, but it's going to be not as impactful as those guys who are playing together. The one thing about no insurance is that it does change the philosophy around insurance fraud, because you're obviously not going to be able to do that. So it's difficult to either side grade or downgrade to somebody else's gear, and that's going to impact money making, especially if you're like more geared than other players. If you're at the stage where you've got class 4 armor and not that many other people do, then you're not really going to be able to throw your class 4 in a bush and take a class 3, leave the raid and then get the class 4 back later. So the insurance fraud is not going to be valid for this particular wipe, which does actually make it harder to make money if you're slightly more geared than the average player. This also ties in with this armor shortage here. So traders across Tarkov are experiencing an armor shortage. This primarily is going to affect Ragman clearly, but there are some other traders with armors as well. We don't know exactly what this is going to mean, but I reckon it's probably going to be maybe class 4 at most. So you're going to have to get things from in the world or from particular scavs, bosses, AI of some kind, that kind of thing. Because the classic places to get armor, good armor at least, is in stashes, which are around the map, and also bosses like Tagilla. He's a pretty good guaranteed one. You could also go after Killer, he's kind of hard, or you could go for Rashala guards, that kind of thing, Gluhar guards, to try to get like class 5 and that stuff. But this leads us into the next one, which is Black Division. Now, maybe they'll change the pools a little bit, but in playing against Black Division on Icebreaker, they have got good guns, they've got good ammo, and they also have good armor. Black Division often have class 5 armor. I think they always have class 5 on Icebreaker at least. And so given that you can't get this here, you may well end up going and hunting down Black Division to try to get your class 5 armor in this particular wipe, rather than going through to either Prepal 3 for the Corund and then up to Ragman 4 for some of the better ones. We've got Handyman. Item crafting time is reduced by 50%, and crafting skill starts at level 51, which is going to be kind of cool. That means that you can craft multiple things at the same time, right from the word go. This is going to interact with some of these, but we'll get to that in one sec. So you're going to be able to make 2 sets of ammo at the same time, for example, and also with a reduced 50%. A lot of the ammos now, they take about an hour 30, something like that, to make them, an hour to 2 hours. It depends on which one. So that's now going to be somewhere like a half an hour to an hour. So it's actually pretty quick, especially given that you can make 2 at the same time. It's almost like 4 times the amount of ammo. So twice as much and half the time. So 4 times overall, which could well interact with the armor shortage. It means that you're going to be well worth making ammos like SOST in the mid game, maybe PS, that kind of thing. So as I said, this is going to interact then with the no fan-in raid required for the hideout, because this means that you can craft stuff like hoses or whatever in the lavatory, and you're going to then be able to post them on the flea market. People are going to be able to use those items in their own hideout. This has quite a few ramifications, because obviously you don't have to find this stuff yourself, which also means that you can put it in your secure container and then die with the stuff in secure and still use it in your hideout, or alternatively, sell it to somebody else who wants that stuff. So you're going to be able to take things like hoses, put them in your butt. You won't need to found and raid Ledex, for example, for the hideout anymore. You'll only need it for Therapist Quest, if that's the way that they're going to do it, because they said there was going to be a quest rework, so we'll see. But then this is going to have a huge implication for selling people stuff on the flea market, because people are going to go to the flea to buy things for the hideout for this particular season. We've then got seasoned PMCs, which doesn't really affect the rest. Your character gains 25% more raid experience. This kind of is what it is. So with these things in mind, let's have a look through the personal positives, and some of these are better than others for sure. And what I would say is quite interesting is that I feel like the personal positives, a lot of them just broadly aren't that great, and there's only a specific few that you really should think about, and there's quite a lot of situational ones and a few that just aren't really worth it at all. And on the personal negatives, I feel that some of those are relatively lenient and are not going to be that hard to circumvent, but it will become more sensible, it will become more obvious once we go through them all. So the first one, Marathon Runner, I personally think this is an S tier perk. Marathon Runner is -3 points, so you will have to make up for it somewhere in the negatives with 3 points from the debuff section. But this arm and leg stamina is consumed 15% slower is actually really quite a big deal for a couple of different reasons. So consumption of 15% slower, this means that it scales with your endurance. So depending on how much stamina you've got, 15% slower effectively increases the size of your bar by 15%, very roughly. And that's going to help you run further, and the higher level you've got, you'll be able to run further and further and further, which is really, really nice. But there's also a hidden benefit to this, which will probably make more sense with a worked example. I'll just go through it now. So the way that this interacts with stims is going to be very interesting, because if you look at the way that stims work, so for an SJ6, for example, this gives you a flat positive of +2 stamina per second. Now, I don't know what the actual rates are in numeric terms of a PMC while you're sprinting, but consuming arm and leg stamina 15% slower gives a much bigger boost than you might imagine to something like SJ6. If I just pull up the calculator, I'll show you an example. So let's say that sprinting in Tarkov gives you -3, and then an SJ6 gives you +2. That means that your overall drain is going to be -1. But if you're consuming your arm and leg stamina 15% slower now, that means that rather than draining 3, you're actually now only going to be draining 2.55. So if you then have -2.55 and you add the 2 from the SJ6 back onto it, this means that you're now only draining 0.55 stamina per second rather than 1. So this is a situation where using a made-up number shows you that this 50% might mean that you can actually run twice as far on an SJ6. So the way that these two things interact together, because it's a percentage buff on a flat bonus, the way that it works with stims might actually be a lot more than the 15% that it looks here. So I think this is definitely going to be a gimme regardless, because this is just such a huge scaling boost to your PMC, and it'll get better as the wipe continues. Safecracker, -6. This is really, really expensive in terms of points, and mechanical keys have a 20% chance to not lose your ability when used. I personally can't think of a really good reason as to why you would actually want to do this, because all this really is rubles. There's quite a lot of the perks, which they just boil down to a bit of extra cash. And the fact that it also says mechanical keys, this means that it doesn't interact with labs cards, for example. So if you've got green or violet or red or blue or any of those guys, it doesn't make any difference with those either. And I guess, a labs card that you take with you for access, that doesn't matter either. So a marked room key, which is really the best example that I could think of. Maybe there are some others. Put it in the comments if you can think of any other great examples that I may have forgotten. But a marked room key, which now has 10 uses, now will effectively, on a probabilistic basis, have 12 uses for you. Those 2 extra uses, is that really worth it? I mean, I know marked keys are expensive, but at the end of the day, that just means you'll have to buy another key slightly more often if you really are like a marked key runner. But whether that's worth it or not, I don't think so. I think that's just a bit of extra cash. So a lot of these just boil down to cash, and I think this is one of them. And this is really expensive for what this is. The next one we have Bushborn. This is situational. I probably won't take it, but I can imagine some people would. So this has got 2 sections to it. This has got walking in vegetation, generates 50% less noise, and 50% movement slowdown. So 50% less movement slowdown when you walk through the bushes. For me, I think the second section is quite a lot more impactful than the first section, because one thing that you do need to think about, in EFT, a lot of sounds are very binary. So even if something is very quiet, really what matters is not how loud it is, it's whether you heard it or not. If you hear a gunshot in the distance, Well, yeah, it was half as quiet as it would have been if it was like close up to you, but you still broadly know the direction of the player because you heard the sound. It only really matters if you do hear a sound or don't hear a sound. And I feel like if you're making 50% less noise, there is maybe a boundary where a player may not hear you, but most of the time, even though it's quieter, they're still going to hear you anyway, so I'm not sure if this is actually much of a bonus. The movement slowdown is probably quite good. The number of times I get snared up on bushes, maybe that's actually kind of handy, but for 5 points, I just don't think it's worth it. So unless you're really playing like a ratty camping style, I don't think this is going to be worth taking, but the movement slowdown is probably the nicer part about it, rather than the noise, in my opinion. Okay, next we have juice time. Consuming a juice drink grants the painkiller effect for 60 seconds. This all comes down to implementation. At first I thought this was a very, very strange perk to have, because 60 seconds isn't very long, and consuming a juice drink actually does take quite a long time. What this is going to depend on is if you have a apple juice, for example, and you drink 1 out of 40, is that going to give you 3 seconds of painkiller like it does for other buffs? Or is it going to give you the full 60 seconds for just having like a tiny nip of juice out of the bottle? Because that could be kind of okay, I guess. Again, though, I do think that it is probably super situational, mainly affects scavs really rather than PMCs, because painkillers, especially after the very first section, as soon as you can access the fleet, painkillers is really no big deal. And one thing that I would point out that a lot of people actually don't know is that analgin painkillers, the basic ones, the 4-use ones that come in the little tablet that you can buy from therapists literally at level 1, those don't actually have any hydration debuff on them anymore. Whether that's a bug or not, I'm not sure, but that disappeared a little bit ago. Hasn't really been worth mentioning because it's such a small detail, but for this, you know, that makes this not really worth it, because you can get painkillers so easily and without any debuffs at the moment. Maybe that'll get reverted for seasonal, but I think this is super situational. Same thing with this one. Sailor's Nostalgia, another 2 points. Consuming canned fish grants health regen +2 for 10 seconds. So this gives you like 20 HP. I don't really know why you would do this. Canned fish also takes a really long time to eat, and 20 health is hardly anything. This is less than for an adrenaline stim. You may as well just take a cheese with you and just heal up. I think this is a really, really strange thing. The only thing that I can think about that is kind of nice about this is that it's like a poor man's Propofol for if you get shotgun slugged in an arm and it blacks it, and you eat one of these things and then you use a CMS, and it means it'll heal up the rest of your body a little bit like a Propofol does, but I feel like that's very, very fringe benefit for 2 points. Youth is another one that I think is actually good. This isn't S tier, but I think it's like A+. So this is energy is consumed 20% slower, and arm and leg stamina is increased by 10%. So the energy part, energy is not stamina, energy is food specifically. So this is kind of helpful. Energy is the one that's more damaging than hydration in the first place. Energy will kill you a lot quicker if it gets to 0 than hydration will. But this is the best part, I think. Arm and leg stamina is increased by 10. Just means that you can run further on 1 stamina bar. That will work really well with Marathon Runner, assuming you're allowed to take them at the same time. We did see previously that there were certain perks you weren't allowed to take together. So we don't actually have that information here as to which ones you are and aren't allowed to take. But 50% slower consumption of stamina plus an extra 10 stamina could actually be quite cool. So I think youth is maybe worth taking as like a second tier in the positives, but it's still pretty good. Street tax. This really depends. It only costs 1, and once per week some scavs pay you protection money. It might be worth taking just on the off chance that it's really good. I don't know, like 1 is not really that much. And I think if you're going to take anything, then some of these others are a little bit better, but it might be worth taking the gamble and putting 1 point in. There's some stuff down there that I think really is not that big of a deal. So if you want to, roll the dice a little, then maybe take this guy. So who knows? It depends on how much money they give you. Tarkov Shooter -3. Bolt action rifle skill leveling speed increased by 100%. Bolt action rifle skill starts at level 10. So the main benefit to this is the Tarkov Shooter questline and all of the Tarkov bolty stuff requires you to get to level 10 overall, and that allows you to do Psycho Sniper, which is the 5 kills with the bolt action rifle without dying and having sniper rifle skills level 10 or bolt action rifle skills level 10. The issue with this is that these days, unless they've changed a lot of stuff with the way that the quests work with these skills, you don't really need this, because Tarkov Shooter 8 itself gives you a whole bunch of sniper skills, as does Shooter Born in Heaven, and there's another one as well that I'm forgetting. So you quite easily get to 10 now just by completing the bolt action quests. So unless you really want that level higher, for what reason I'm not entirely sure, outside of the quest, I don't think it's worth taking. So if you're trying, if you always find that you struggle to get to that 10th level and you want to rush prestige, if they bring prestige into this season, which again is also uncertain at the moment. Nikita said no originally, and then he said actually we're thinking about it, but it's not been confirmed either way. If that does end up being the case, and then maybe you want to think about it. I think this is highly situational, and maybe for speedrunners who don't really like doing the bolt action stuff, maybe. But for most people, I really wouldn't take this. Diet. This is cheap, but all provisions consume 50% less resource. So if you've got a water bottle and you drink all of that, then it's going to give you twice what it says on the listing. This means that you can basically drink 30 out of 60 of a water, and it's as if you drank the full water bottle. I think this is just a money thing again, because it means you don't have to bring quite as much food and drink into a raid. It does also mean that if you're keeping some of this stuff in your secure container, then it saves you on slots technically, so it's a little bit easier to manage, but I'm not sure if this is worth taking, to be honest. Hercules, -3. This is another S tier skill, in my opinion. Strength and endurance skills start at level 15. This is a big boost for a lot of people. Admittedly, levels 0 up to level 10 are the easiest to get because you only need 10 points, then 20, then 30, then 40, then 50, etc. But levels sort of 8 or 9 up to level 15 is where it starts to get annoying, and you need 100 experience in that skill to get to the next level. And this is a huge boost at the beginning of the wipe to stop you just like crawling through those first couple of levels. So I think this is actually worth taking. It's pretty obvious as to what it's going to do, and we just need to find 3 points somewhere down below, which we can do pretty easily. This paired with Sprinter as well, which I also think is really good for only -2. Running speed is increased by 5%. You can't actually buy running speed. You can't get running speed from anywhere. So this is sort of invaluable, if you know what I mean. The only place that you get running speed affected is by armor, and that's negatively. So this will allow you to wear something like a Corunda, basically face no debuff. And if you're wearing a really light armor, then you will actually have faster running speed than you would normally. So this seems really good to me for only 2 points. I really, really like this one. Now, the next 4 are all in the kind of the same category. Firstly, they have an offset in the negatives. And secondly, I don't think that they give you enough of a bonus to warrant taking them given the points and what you need to do to offset them, basically. So we'll look at them one by one. So this one, Thrombophilia, is a bleed chance is decreased by 25%. Bleeds happen in Tarkov. 25% isn't that big of a deal. You can fix it with either a bandage or with a tourniquet. I'm not sure this is really worth taking. You may need to take a few less bandages, but really this is just a monetary thing. So I'm really not bothered about this. Then you've got hyperdipsia and polyphagia. Hydration is consumed 15% slower, and energy is consumed 15% slower. These don't really seem worth taking either to me, because again, you just take a little bit of extra water, you take a little bit of extra food, and you've solved these problems without having to spend 4 points on these positives. Same thing with sturdy bones. This is -3, which is a lot. Limb fracture chances decreased by 15%. Falling from heights deals 15% less damage. I just don't think this moves the needle. When you fall normally, you either really hurt yourself or you don't really hurt yourself at all. Fractures are easily fixed with the splint. Also, with the introduction of the TIG splint, special streamer item, that means that you can have one slot fixing 7 breaks, so you don't really run out of that resource either. I'm not sure if any of these are particularly worthwhile taking. If you were going to take anything, then I would probably just like not take these if you really don't want to deal with the hydration and food stuff, and just take diet instead, because it means you can just literally keep like an Aquamari and then something else in your secure container and fix all of your food and water without really running out. So this is much better value than trying to take either of these two, in my opinion. Same thing with sturdy bones. Okay, so last 2. These are interesting-ish. So average at -10. Originally this came out being a bit more expensive, but it seems like they've tweaked it to be a little bit cheaper. All character skills start at level 25, but cannot be increased further, excluding crafting. So we know crafting from up here, this is starting at level 51. And so I think this actually is going to be important for those players who are only going to play the first section of the wipe, maybe the first month or 2, or are casual players and are not going to put that much time in throughout the wipe itself. It's a little bit of a boring skill, but a lot of people will actually benefit from this because character skills starting at 25 literally from day 1, especially for strength and endurance, is pretty crazy. Like the amount of things that you're going to have that a lot of people just never reach during the wipe. Like this is all the assault rifle skills, so assault rifles, submachine guns, that'll all be 25. You'll have health 25, metabolism 25. I think metabolism probably is the one that you have the biggest downside on, simply because that's the one that most people get to elite first. So you're going to get to level 25 quite quickly on that, even if you're a casual player. But strength and endurance, a lot of players don't even get to level 25 during a whole wipe. And combined with stress resistance and all the other stuff, this one genuinely is quite good for those players who know that they're not going to be trying to finish the season or go for Kappa in a 6-month period or anything like that, which I reckon is probably about half of you. This is one to really, really think about, but you're going to have to think about it carefully because you'll have to take some negatives to go with it. Finally, we have Kappa Protocol, -21. This is really expensive. Given you can't put ammo inside the secure container, I'm not sure if this is really worth it. If you're really a super loot goblin and you're on a standard account, maybe it's worth trying to push to 21 to get this. If it came down a little bit more, maybe it'd be a bit worth it. But the fact that you don't have the founding raid for the hideout does mean you will be able to make quite a lot of money having a bigger secure container. So for standard players, like, maybe you want to think about it, but I do think it's super situational. And I don't think it's really worth taking all of that negative for the purposes of this. I think you do better off literally just having average and having a better PMC rather than having a few more extra squares in the bum. Okay, so which ones I think were really good? So Marathon Runner, Sprinter, and Hercules. I thought these were great. I think these are the ones I'm probably going to take if they stay like this. This is going to give you -8 points, and then potentially Youth as well. That's going to give you -11. And then, like, after that, I don't know, maybe I'll take Street Tax to give -12. Something along those lines. The rest of them, I think we can just leave. We can fix them in other ways. It's either just food or water and other stuff like that, or some skills things that I don't really care about, or strange effects that I think are going to be really, really niche. Okay, so we've got to fill 8 to 12 points with negatives. So let's go and have a look at these guys. And we'll look at them one by one again. So Haemophilia. Bleed chance is increased by 25%. Now this kind of depends on what they mean by 25%. So if we look at the ballistics chart, for example, different bullets have a different light bleed and heavy bleed percentage on here. So you can see this ranges, it depends on the bullet. So some of them go up to 30%, 40%, something like that. There's like Magnum HP, hollow points. So the highest ones are probably going to be the shotgun slugs ones. These ones, some of them give you quite a lot of positive, but they typically sit in the range of 20 to 40, if at all. So yeah, BMG HP is like +70 or something. So it sort of depends on whether it's 25% less of that, in which case it's just not really that impactful, or it's going to be like a flat 25% addition to this, because 25 plus this would be like 35% rather than 10%. It means you'll be bleeding a lot more. But so long as you've got adequate meds with you, I feel like this is manageable. Most bleeds aren't that bad either, and if you've got, you know, multiple heavy bleeds, then most of the time we just deal with that by slapping in a Zagustin anyway. So I think towards the later stages, then this is really not a big deal. It'll be a problem if you end up with 3 heavy bleeds early on when you don't have enough tourniquets, but you're just going to have to take a few of them. And so, again, I think this one is really just a cash outlay thing. You're going to lose maybe a few tourniquets every raid because you go in with like 3 or 4 of them or something. And then you've got bandage stuff dealt with like car first aid kit or a Soleil or something like that. But I feel like this is one that you maybe could take. Osteoporosis, this is similar, because this is the offset to sturdy bones. I think we saw on one of the previews, if you took this, you couldn't take that, and vice versa. So what this does, limb fracture chance is increased by 15%, falling from heights deals 50% more damage. I just don't feel like this is too bad. I feel like osteoporosis is probably one of the best personal negatives to take, because again, you can take a regular splint, you can take the alu splint, you could take the TIG splint, and then you really are not worried about this at all anymore. Just be a bit careful about falling, and I break my leg all the time in Tarkov anyway, and it's not really that big of a deal. And when you're on painkillers, then you're not going to really care about fractures like normal, as long as we take the same amount of damage that we do now. So I feel like this is kind of a gimme. Now the next one, exhaustion at +4. I mean, this is quite a lot of points to give you, but I think this one is awful. This is probably my least favorite of all of these, outside of the sort of metagame ones, for the ones that actually like affect you in-game at least. So arm and leg stamina recovers 15% slower, and arm and leg stamina is reduced by 10. This is like the offset of some of these ones. This one here, Marathon Runner. I think this is really, really awful. This will feel terrible, and it also scales and gets worse as you go along. So I'm really not keen on this at all. I would say just avoid this at all costs, unless it gave you like a bazillion points because they changed it because no one wants to take it. I'd be very careful about taking this, unless you're trying to do like a challenge run or a fun run or something, and then it's not really about min-maxing anyway. I think this is probably one of the single worst ones that you could take for your PMC. Then we've got Well That Hurt at +2. All medkit uses consume 25% more resource. I actually don't think this is too bad. If you want to fix your whole body, that's going to cost 440, because that's how much your PMC's health is. And it means that instead of that, it's now going to cost you 550. I don't think it's that big of a deal. You're very rarely fixing your whole body anyway. If you need to fix a full limb up, you know, with 70, it's now going to cost you instead 87.5. It's like 15 more points. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. I feel like these 2 points are kind of coming for free from Well That Hurts, so I think this is definitely one to consider. Now, incompetent with +4 is a lot. but this sort of depends on how it interacts with everything else. I wouldn't take this normally, but there are situations, depending on what you're allowed to do, as to where this can be good. So all character skills are leveled 25% slower, excluding bolt-action rifles, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it'll add up over time. And all character skills can only be increased up to level 30, excluding crafting. So this is like the offset to average, I guess. So what it depends on is whether you can take average and incompetent at the same time. I feel like they might block this so that you can't. But if you can, then it means average only costs 6, because this is basically free, right? You can only get this puts you to level 25, and this says no more than 30, and skill level slower, but with this you don't level any skills. So if you can pick this and this at the same time, and you're going for an average strategy, then that would be really good, because you can get this for 6. Otherwise, I think this is a tough call. I don't know. I think it depends. Like, you're either the kind of player who isn't going to get those skills anyway, and so picks average, and therefore won't be able to pick this, or can pick it in tandem, or you're the type of player who wants to get to max skills, in which case this is going to really get in the way. So I don't think anyone's really going to pick this, and it would need to have a lot more points on it to tempt me in, at least. Right, so the next two, I actually think these are okay. Polydipsia +1, hydration is consumed 50% faster, and chronic fatigue syndrome +1, energy is consumed 15% faster as well. This might hurt at the beginning of the wipe, I'm going to be honest with you, but you can get 2 points kind of for free here, because you just need to deal with them by buying more food and water. It's the same as before, it just costs you a bit more rubles. Maybe you bring a bottle of water in your actual bag with you or something, but I really don't think this is that big of a deal. So these are definitely on the list to consider to add to what you need to do to get to the points, to grab some of the good stuff from above. Personality vacuum, this is 2. Charisma skill cannot be increased, and all trader items cost 20% more. I don't think this is actually that bad, with one caveat, that charisma skill is required for getting prestige 2 and above. So it's going to depend on whether you're a prestige player or not. I'm assuming that if they do add prestige to the game for seasonal, that when you reset your character, you will then also be able to reset your perks as well, I would guess. So it probably doesn't matter for the first playthrough either way, because charisma doesn't really do all that much, and it's only for the second set of prestige that you actually need charisma to level up, because of the way that they simplified the prestige system. Level 1 prestige is actually very easy now and doesn't require charisma at all. All trader items cost 20% more. I actually don't think that's a big deal either. It'll affect you kind of more at the beginning than towards the end, but as soon as you get onto the flea market, most of the stuff you're going to buy is available on the flea, and lots of people list stuff down to the trader price anyway. So we'll just see how that goes. I mean, ammo is probably going to be the most expensive thing, because you can't buy that outside of packs on the flea market at the moment anyway. But this is just a ruble thing. Run a few more scav runs. You might be able to pick this up. If you're happy taking the extra ruble cost, then you might be able to get some points for free basically for doing this. Now, Dr. Jekyll, I think this sounds absolutely horrible, and for 1 point, this seems really bad. So after gaining the fresh wound status, it cannot be removed until the end of the raid. What fresh wound does, this is when you get hurt and then you heal yourself, and you have that little sticker in the corner which looks like a, like a cross bandage plaster thing over your guy, and it means that if you keep running or you get hurt again, then you can open up another bleed. It normally happens after you're running, so if you continue to sprint after you've been hurt, you'll open up another bleed. For this not to go away, I think is just going to be really, really annoying. And 1 point, I don't think it's worth taking. This sounds like it sucks, honestly. And if you take that in combo with this is going to make your life really, really miserable, I think. Allergic. This is one that's a bit controversial. I may end up taking this, and I think it's a bit of a gamble, but become allergic to 2 random items for the provisions or medication category. And my thesis for this is, unless they keep it to a very particular pool of items, there are actually a lot of items within these 2 categories. There's about roughly 45 in each. So there's about 90 items, something like 80, 88 or something like that. There's about 88 items within these categories. So if it really is random, completely random within this category, then you're probably going to end up being allergic to the army bandage and like the 3 BTG stim, for example. You can imagine really annoying examples where something terrible happens and you get allergic to the CMS kit and also the Serve 12, which would be absolutely horrible, but the chance of that happening is super, super low. I'm probably going to take the gamble on this personally, because unless you get hit by something like that, or Solewa plus car kit, then I feel like there's pretty much all the other events are avoidable. Like, it would be annoying if you got hit with the mule stim, for example, but you could always take up Dolbus too. There's usually different ways to get what you want done. As I said, the only example really that I can think of where you can get hit by 2 items that specifically get used in that particular way, and there's really not any other replacement, is a CMS and the Serve 12 to actually fix your limbs. But do remember that it says become allergic, so it depends what allergic means. I mean, if it means that you instantly die, obviously that's one thing, but you may just have to take the downside if you do end up getting allergic to one or the other. I think I'm going to take the gamble. I think it's very unlikely you're going to have something super impactful for this, but that's kind of up to you. I think it's kind of a free 3 points. Okay, the last couple. We have Broken Secure Container for +4. Secure Container is restricted to cash, keys, dog tags, special equipment, and certain containers. I don't know if the implication here is that you could put an injector case in your secure and then put injectors in there. I imagine not. I imagine it just allows you to put the containers in there so you could sell them later but not actually use any stims in there, for example. I would be very nervous about that because the stims case is such a key part of the secure container. But also in the light of the way that this season is going to go with the global modifier of no found in raid for hideout, this means that you're not going to be able to put barter items in here to then sell to other people. This is going to have a huge monetary impact on you, and I don't know if it's worth taking. If you think that you can get away with that, you don't really care about the money so much, and that making money for you is pretty easy, then maybe you want to take it, especially if you want to do a fun run. But I think for a lot of people, this is going to be quite key in terms of just getting items that you need out of raid and quest items and that kind of stuff, because you will still need to be able to get certain things out of raid that aren't these things. Do remember though, as I said at the beginning, that we still can't put ammo in there, so the secure container is a little limited compared to how it used to be, but I'm not sure if I'm going to take this one. The next one, which is even worse, is no flea market. Trading with players on the flea market is disabled. I don't think that either of these two are anywhere near enough points. It might be worth considering the secure container one if it was like +10 or something, if they changed some of these things. And no flea market would have to be like, I don't know, +15 or whatever before it's even worth thinking about, you know? Trading with players on the flea market is disabled is just so critical for your wipe, for making money, for getting progression, for getting items for quests, for getting armor, for all this other stuff. I think this is going to make life really, really hard. So unless you want to take this for other reasons, I really would avoid taking this from a sort of min-max perspective. It just isn't worth it. And the final one we have is third leg. Movement speed is decreased by 1%, and buying items at Therapist is 5% cheaper. I know this is the meme one. This is basically a free +1. Unless this is blocked from taking Sprinter, for example, with the running speed, I think you should just take this if you do need that 1 extra point. The buying items at Therapist, we don't really care, but the movement speed decreased by 1%. Again, it doesn't really matter. A lot of armors do that anyway, and we hardly notice, but this pretty much just gives you like 1 free bonus point to spend on something up here. If you did want to do like the least impactful run for seasonal and not mess around with anything, you could literally grab third leg and then grab street tax. That would be the super easy way to do it, in my opinion. Okay, so now we've gone through all of these, which ones actually are the good ones? So as I said, I think you definitely want to take Marathon Runner. This one is probably the best skill overall, along with Sprinter. So that means that you're going to need 5 points for these two, and then Hercules as well. So that gives you 8. So that's like an 8 point as a minimum. I do also think you might want to take Youth as well. Energy is kind of annoying at the beginning, and it might offset some of these things down below there, and so that's 11. Then from the personal negatives, I think the ones that are basically free, Osteoporosis +3, and I'm going to take Allergic, because I think that it's very unlikely you're going to get spiked with 2 horrible things. So that already gets you to 6. And then what you can do is you can either take something like third leg and Well That Hurt, so a bit more medkit usage, and this third leg one, which is basically free, and that will actually give you 1 extra point because of third leg. So you can grab like street tax as well, something like that. Or technically speaking, you could do, you know, Polydipsia Hydration is consumed 15% faster and energy is consumed 15% faster, depending on which one you want. This is kind of my point. I think that these are actually relatively easy. Most of them are relatively easy to offset. Like the Bleed Chance one and Personality Vacuum, I think are also probably okay. I feel like this is probably better than this one because the Trader Items thing is actually going to cost you real money, whereas the Bleed Chance thing is just a couple of bandages. It's not really going to be that big of a deal. And then look out for Average and combining that with Incompetent if you can. If not, then you're probably going to have to pick a few more of these things to get Average. But as I said, these ones are not really too bad. Just avoid the Dr. Jekyll, avoid Exhaustion, avoid the Broken Secure and No Fleet unless they change them quite a bit, and avoid Incompetent if you actually want to level your skills. The rest of them are pretty well avoidable, or you can manage them if you do take them, and then you can get some of the really good ones from up here. I'm going to add this in slightly later on while I'm editing this video. I have been informed that the guys at db4tarkov.com have added a /season section, so you can actually go and test out builds in here. So if we go to look at the one that I thought was quite good, we'll add Street Tax, we'll add Sprinter, we will add Youth, we will add Marathon Runner, and we will add Hercules. I think this is probably a really nice build that gets you like most of the good stuff. So on the other side, I'm going to go with third leg, obviously. We're going to do the Well That Hurt, because I think that's not really that big of a deal. Haemophilia, Osteoporosis, that gets us to 8 points. And then you could use Allergic. and that gets you to 11. We need one more, so we're going to either pick hydration is consumed 15% faster probably, or I wonder whether you could pick chronic fatigue. Energy is consumed 15% faster because you've got energy is consumed 20% slower on the positive side. Assuming you're able to do that, that would then get you to 0 and allow you to pick all of these. You could technically do something slightly different. As you can see here, there's a few others that you can choose instead, which I think might be worth it, but you'd have to pick like personality vacuum, for example. But anyway, you can go to dbfortarkov.com/season, and you can have a play around with some builds here. Obviously, we don't have the offsets in there, if you pick this and you can't pick this, because we don't know what those are going to be yet. But this will give you a good idea about what you can pick and make it a little easier to figure out exactly what you need to do. So where actually are we in the timeline? Right now, we have just had the expansions hub that was launched. This has been a little bit delayed. This was supposed to come out in June. It actually ended up coming out finally on the 8th of July. That was when the expansions hub has come out. So in here, this has effectively replaced the website where you buy stuff. Some things you're now able to buy using Tarcoin, and some things you still have to use actual cash for. So you can't buy upgrades for additions using Tarcoin. It has to be using actual real money, which is slightly unfortunate. You can also buy stash lines in there, you could buy cosmetics, so it's really replaced the website. You could also buy the upgrade to PvE. So that's come here. This is supposed to be June, but it's been about a week late, and we've got these regular mini events. So the next event that we should be seeing is this one, Blackout. I've seen a couple of teasers for that coming out of the BSG team, and that's going to be patch 1.0.6.5. So I reckon that's probably either going to be coming up on today or tomorrow, and that's going to then run over the weekend, and I assume it's going to be a week at least, because this is a named event here, or it's going to start next week and run for a week, which is what my preference would be, to be perfectly honest, and then go into this, which I think is going to launch at the end of July. I don't think BSG are in any huge rush to put this out in the next week or something, personally, just simply because they didn't set a date for it in the first place. People are happy to wait. We still have another event in the meanwhile that people actually want to play before this seasonal comes through, and they're already on a little bit of a delayed schedule. So then with that, we're going to see the seasonal system where we're going to be able to pick these perks and get a bit more indication on some of the actual implementations of some of these specifics. But for now, we've seen the perks, we've done what we can, got a couple of builds down there depending on what you want. I hope that you all will enjoy seasonal when it comes through. For those of you who've been wondering where I have been on the stream side, I've been doing some prep work in the background in general. I'm actually going to be away on Saturday through to the following Sunday, and then after that I'll be back. So worst case scenario, maybe I miss a day or two at the beginning of the new seasonal system, but hopefully not. Hopefully this will be pushed towards the end of the month, and then we can play it fully. But I'll be back streaming every single day, making videos every single day for the new seasonal system, just kind of taking a little bit of a break for now before it gets super intense, and trying to fix my life before that launches, because I'll be doing very little else outside of EFT. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.